All right, good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing today? Good, excellent. Are you all excited to be here? Yes, excellent. Well, I'm excited to be here. For those of you that may not know, this is our entrepreneurship panel. We have 4 panelists with us here today that I will introduce in just a moment. But before we get started for the afternoon, I'm going to go over some housekeeping rules for those of you that have already been in these sessions. You will know, you'll have already heard this, but for those of you that haven't, I'm just going to go over these quickly. So just so you know, in case of an emergency, we do have fire exits at the back of the room. So in case of one, you'll just use the nearest fire exit. We ask that during this session, you turn off your cell phones, close your computers, take out your earpieces, anything like that, so that we can focus and respect our panelists that have given up their time to come and speak with you today. And this is only an hour and 15-minute long session, so we do ask that you would stay seated throughout the remainder of this session, just because for respect, as well as the fact that we want to make sure that those that are attending the session do get their learning passport points. If you need to, if you step out, you won't be able to come back in and get your points, just so that we can make sure that those that are getting stamped for learning passport points were actually at the session. And again, there will be a question period at the end, so any questions that you have for the panelists, please feel free to write down and hold that till the end after we have addressed questions regarding just me and the panelists. Then you will have a chance to ask them the questions. And this is, again, a learning passport event, so in order to be efficient, we're going to ask you to fill out the pages in your learning passport or an activity sheet before you come up to get your passport stamped. So Allison will be stamping here by the front door, and Miriam will be coming at the end, or Miriam or Colleen will be at the top stamping there. So, all right, so let's get ready to start the questioning, and I'm going to introduce our panelists. So we're going to start on this end. We have Joachim Stroink, the owner of the Trailshop and Rackology, as well as MLA for Halifax, Chebucto. And then we have Michelle Cleary, who's actually, I love to announce this, Sean's lovely wife, and she is the owner of the Maple Tree Montessori Preschools. Then we have David Eisnor, who is a business development manager with Futurepreneur Canada, and as well as the president of South Shore Farms, and the owner of David Eisnor Property Management. Well, that's quite a few things. And then at the end, we have Jana Dempsey, who is the principal owner at Maiden, Fine Yard, and Fleece Artists. All right, so let's start off with the questions, and the first one is, please describe briefly the organizations you run and your own organizations, and we'll start with Joachim.
Thank you very much for being here. I guess coming to this forum, it's wearing 2 hats from being an entrepreneur and government and how they work together. So presently, I have taken a step back in my businesses because of my government role, but primarily what we do, my wife and I own the Trailshop together, which is an outdoor store that's one of the oldest ones in Canada. It originated as a cooperative in '67, and now we purchased the existing business 10 years ago. From there, we have expanded our business and shrunk our business to now we're down to 2 retail stores, the other store being Rackology. Rackology is an interesting model because it just deals with roof racks and hitches. So between outdoor industries, which is the Trailshop, which is hiking tents, sleeping bags, kayaks, stand-up paddleboards, to roof racks and hitches, it's quite an eclectic mix of products and services that we offer.
All right, Michelle.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm Michelle Cleary. I run and own Maple Tree Montessori in Halifax. I have 2 campuses. I have one on Quinpool Road that I run out of my home. And the second campus I have, the first campus, is a larger campus, and it's on Oxford Street. I run like a chicken, really. There's no other word. I manage 11 staff. When somebody's out sick, I step into many different roles. I don't just sit behind a desk. Yesterday I was up at 4:30 in the morning cooking lunch for 2 campuses and getting ready for licensing inspections. So I wear many hats at my business.
All right, next we'll hear from David.
Hi, my name's David Eisnor, and I wear a couple hats here. I guess I was mentioned in my intro, and so a couple things that are worth mentioning that I do. I work for an organization called Futurepreneur Canada. We were formerly CYBF, the Canadian Youth Business Foundation, so some folks may have heard of that organization. I see at least one, maybe a couple folks in the crowd that I recognize. And we basically provide services for entrepreneurs, individuals who are interested in starting a business between the ages of 18 and 39, both financing and mentorship. So my role is really supporting anybody out there that's looking to start a business, both in the province and in Atlantic Canada, my regions, but we're actually a national organization. And that's one hat, that's the paying job, we'll call it. But I also mentioned I own just recently, last year, started a farm called Soshore Farms. And I don't know if folks know what the Haskap berry is, maybe a nod or a no. It's been in the news a lot lately. It looks a little bit like a large high bush blueberry, but it's a little longer and maybe a little bit funny shaped. And it's one of the new super berries in the province, and it's being grown down in the South Shore. So about a year ago, I bought a farm property, and I set it up last summer as a Haskap orchard. And I got some property management on the side and do a few other things. But those are the two main things that I'll be here and be happy to chat about today.
Perfect, thank you. Now, Jana?
There we go. Hi, my name's Jana Dempsey. I'm the president of Maiden Fine Yarn and Fleece Artist. A little bit about what we do. We hand dye yarn for the knitting industry. We're a wholesaler. We do all bespoke custom work, and we sell all over the world. I run the business. I guess that's a little bit of a chicken. I had a couple people out today, so I've been packing boxes with packing tape for most of the day. But you do what you have to do. I don't know what else to say about that's what I do. We'll get more into it later, I guess.
All right, excellent. It's clear that all of you have many hats, so we'll be interested to hear more about those. So the next question is, what was your motivation for starting your business, and why did you choose to start the business that you did? And we'll start with Michelle this time.
Well, my motivation was simple. I had a 2-year-old son, and I didn't want to go outside of my home to earn a living. That's the simple truth of it. I started my business 13 years ago when my son was 2. I had taught for a number of years in Toronto at a Montessori school, and I knew at some point I would probably have a small Montessori school. So my business started 13 years ago in the basement of my house with a very small group of children, 5 to be exact, and my son was one of them. And every year it grew a little bit. My son is going to be 15 next month, and my daughter is 9, and both of my children have come through the school. And I have no regrets about that, none. It allowed me to be at home and also fulfill my passion for teaching.
Excellent. Dave?
I grew up in Mahone Bay, so I'm from rural Nova Scotia, and my grandfather and my father after him owned a garage. So for me, when I saw my parents and before that my grandfather going to work, it was always going to work for himself. So I always knew, I never really thought about the idea of going to work for somebody else. I always thought I'm going to be my own boss. And from the early, like the snow shoveling jobs to some of the mowing lawn jobs and things like that, I've always tried to be self-employed. And actually the day job that I have, which is actually not self-employed, I more fell into it because I was researching about how to go about opening up the first business that I opened up in Halifax, and went into an organization called Seed and ended up learning all about their services and saying, wow, this is really neat. I'd like to work here and work with entrepreneurs as well as start my own business, which eventually led me into working for CYBF, which is now Futurepreneur Canada. But for me, I'm always going to be an entrepreneur. I'm always going to have something on my own. Right now, my entrepreneurship is on the side, but my goals are definitely about working and living down in the South Shore and being on that full time within a few years' time. But it's starting small. Always, any business I've done, I've always started small and organically grown it. So right now, keeping a day job to help support me, but it's something that I love to do, working with entrepreneurs all the time, and eventually growing into being a full-time entrepreneur myself down the road.
Excellent. Jana?
Didn't I already go? Or is this a new question?
This is the
What are we
question
talking about?
regarding why did you start your business?
Oh,
What was your
why?
motivation?
Okay, there we go. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated in my history. So our family business, Fleece Artist, was started in 1978 as a supply shop for not just textile artists, but primarily textile artists. So I grew up around a business, and it came from another business. And if you go back, I think it's 7 generations of, either all the businesses, every generation kind of changes it and does something different. Originally, they were watchmakers, so 7 generations back. So I was actually working at a consultancy in London, and I got a call from my mother who was having health issues, and she was wondering if I could come back and kind of sub in for her. So I did that, and then I went away and did some other things when she got better. And then there was a time when I was, not really fulfilled in the job I was doing. And I saw an opportunity to start a new line, a higher end line, a different niche, different product, and we jumped at it. So that part of the business, Maiden, that I started that 10 years ago. It's linked to the other business. We do the same thing, but for slightly different markets. So that's how I got into it.
All right. No, we'll hear from Joachim.
I guess for me, becoming an entrepreneur, it was kind of ingrained in myself as I had a family member who was a very successful entrepreneur, but also growing up, I was always trying to make a buck. No matter what I was trying to do, I was always trying to figure out ways to utilize what I had around me, from when I was lifeguarding on the beaches, organizing pub crawls, and selling the shirts and taking that money to pay for university. That was the way my mind worked. And then when I was working for other people, for some reason, I would always get in a fight with my boss, and always never gelled with my boss because I had a better solution for him. So it got to a point where I was like, well, this isn't going to work. In order for me to work and bring an income, I have to be self-employed, because I don't like taking direction from someone else. So understanding my own personality was a big part of becoming an entrepreneur, and knowing that I strive to make a dollar, but strive to do what I love to do. So when the opportunity, how do I make money and still enjoy my passion, which was the outdoors. So I was studying to be a mountain guide, primarily out west in New Zealand, and climbing big mountains, and then realized I had an epiphany, I'm not going to make a buck doing this living. So I came back to Nova Scotia to end up buying the Trailshop, which totally fills my niche, my need for my passion of the outdoors, and then taking that of how can I better the community that I live in while being an entrepreneur. So taking that social responsibility and my passion and my drive and taking the 3 of them and putting them into a business is kind of what drove me to where I am today, and now one step farther into politics. So I guess, an entrepreneur for me was a stepping stone to try to better my community, but also live and enjoy what I do.
Excellent. It's kind of clear that even though you all had slightly different reasons, the strain here is following your passion or following your family too. So it's kind of neat to see that, the motivation for starting. So thank you for sharing. All right, so we'll start with David this time. The next question is, when you look back on your education and experiences, are you doing what you plan to do?
So again, from a rural community, grew up in a town, so not necessarily on a farm. I actually went to Acadia, so I studied business at Acadia. So I actually took entrepreneurship, and again, knew I would be my own boss in some way. The first business that I started, and I didn't mention that before, but the Backpackers down in Gottingen Street, and that business came out of traveling. And when I finished traveling and finished up my degree at Acadia, I realized it was through that travel, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to open up a hostel. Had I ever owned a hotel or a hostel or worked in any of those types of things? No, I didn't. But I believe in something called just-in-time learning, and for me, there's an opportunity there. I took all of the skills that I had learned at Acadia, plus my personality and some of the things that I just naturally am, and I put that towards that. Then I go into farming. I researched. I saw a new opportunity. I have never, ever thought about being a farmer before, nor did I have any formal education in farming. But again, I saw an opportunity. There's so many mentorship opportunities around, so many opportunities to learn from other people. So I didn't have a formal education around farming, but for me, it's all about the opportunity and then using the resources that are available to you, bringing them all together, and then doing what you want to do. And I'm still not an experienced farmer. I'm very much at the very early stages. I've just planted a crop. I don't have any berries to show for it. But I think that it's the experiences that you have and then adapting them to the opportunities that are available to you, and then pulling in the resources and mentorship that are available around you to be successful.
All right. Jana?
You would think that growing up around yarn, I would think that I might have thought that I'd be doing this, but the answer is no. It never occurred to me that this would happen. I actually have a degree in theater. Has nothing to do with yarn in any way. But what it did have something to do with, when you mount a production, it's a business endeavor. And when you're in theater school, you mount many productions, you get together a team with different skills, you have very tight deadlines, tiny budgets, and you work for you have an opening night. There's no extensions, there's no, oh, but I didn't get it done. So that experience, when I went to theater school, I wasn't thinking that I would work in the theater. It was just what interested me at the time, and it was fantastic brain training. So I used some of those things that I learned in theater school every day. Yeah. So yes, I mean, I think in a weird way, sometimes it's about following a passion, and sometimes it's about following an opportunity. And I saw an opportunity for a lifestyle fit and an opportunity to make some money. So sometimes that just converges, and that's what you're chasing.
All right. Perfect. Yoga?
Looking back at my education experiences, I guess what brought me here more is my experiences and my education. I have a degree in geography, which has nothing to do with business. And I guess for me, running my business was not about reading a book and trying to figure it out, but it was what my gut told me to do. So I made some mistakes, but I learned from those mistakes, and that's what made me grow. And I guess that's a big part of being an entrepreneur, is not wearing your mistakes and just pushing through them and continuing on so that you can succeed. Or if you fail, that's okay too. And I'm just going to touch on that a bit, because I think that's a systemic problem for entrepreneurs in Nova Scotia especially, is that if you fail, Nova Scotians think that you failed and you're not a big part of the community. Well, you are. You're a huge part of the community because you tried. And if you succeed, then you should be celebrated just as much as someone who failed. And I guess those are kind of things that I've learned from looking at my other friends who are entrepreneurs, who have succeeded or who have failed. They should all be treated the same. Did I plan to be where I am today? Definitely not. I plan to be in the mountains, but now I sit in the province of Nova Scotia in the Legislature, and that was not where I thought I would ever be. Am I proud to be there? Absolutely. Can I make a difference? Absolutely. But that started because I was an entrepreneur. And if it wasn't because of being an entrepreneur, I don't think I would ever be in government.
All right. And now we'll hear from Michelle.
Well, I didn't, my education didn't take me where I am. I mean, it sort of did. My undergrad is my major is Canadian Studies, and my minor is Sociology. I don't have a BEd. I've thought about going after one. And I left my degree in its final year because I got married and moved to Ontario because my husband was done his master's degree and he needed to get a job. And sometimes you go where you have to go to be together, and that is okay. I know. It's very nice. But initially, I actually thought I wanted to be a professor. I'm extremely passionate about Canadian art, and I had the luxury of having Dr. Della Stanley be my advisor here at the Mount. I have still a lovely relationship with her. And so during my time here, as I worked through my years in my degree, I really thought long and hard about a master's and then a PhD. But I also discovered along that line and that road that I can't really sit still, that committing to long, arduous papers and work behind a desk is not for me, and that I needed a creative outlet. My job allows me to be creative every single day. And so I think I knew secretively a little bit that I would have my own business and be an entrepreneur. I had my first business when I was 16. I sold roses outside the liquor store on Agricola Street, actually. I bought them wholesale for 25 cents a rose, and I sold them for $2.75 a rose, and I always got a 25-cent tip. So, you know, my profit margin was pretty huge. So I guess if I really think about it and think back to those days when I was that young, I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. And I think Jana's right. Sometimes your path takes you a different direction, and you don't, and it's not a bad thing. I'm happy doing what I do. I love what I do.
Excellent. I find it interesting how many of you took degrees that don't necessarily relate to what you're doing now, but yet you still took away a lot out of your experiences and that education that you can still apply. Especially, I love the theater that you can still apply that. It's so true, and everything that we do, we can apply it in a different way. So thank you for sharing those experiences. All right, so we'll start with Jana this time, and we're going to ask you, what are the advantages and or disadvantages that you feel being an entrepreneur brings?
To my life?
Yes.
Okay. Advantages. You're the boss. And, you know, you get to make the final call. But being the boss also means that other people's livelihood is on your shoulders, and that can keep you up at night. So yes, and not just their livelihood. Sometimes it's like other people's growth, professional growth, is on your shoulders as well, and that's very challenging, especially in what I do, where there's no specific growth within my organization. You know, there's not that many steps, there's not that many levels of seniority. I mean, basically, I have artists who are painting yarn. So there's not really anywhere for them to go, and keeping people motivated year after year is challenging. So that's a disadvantage. Another advantage would be, obviously, you can set your own hours, work in the middle of the night if you need to, take an afternoon off to take your kids skiing if you have to. So that would be an obvious advantage. And that's it.
All right. Joachim?
I guess for me, you know, the advantages are that I get to do something that I love every single day. I get to go to work and do what I love to do. I love to sell. I love to hear people's adventures. I like to take my own adventures with the products that I sell. I get to kayak. I get to stand-up paddleboard. I get to do all that fun stuff that I call fun. At the same time, I get to worry about all that. So worry about how to pay the bills, worry about how you're going to treat your staff, worry about how you're going to make payroll that week, or all those wonderful things about being an entrepreneur. Do I call them negatives or disadvantages? No, I call them being part of being what an entrepreneur is supposed to be. You're supposed to succeed, and you're supposed to worry. You're supposed to celebrate. You're supposed to fail, and that is what about being about an entrepreneur, and that is what I love about it.
All right. Michelle?
There are lots of advantages and disadvantages to being your own boss. Sometimes I feel like the disadvantages outweigh the advantages, depending on the day. It is an enormous weight to carry, knowing that you are responsible for so many people's livelihood. I think I already said I employ 11 people, and I fret about that. I'm a fretter by nature, which probably makes me really good at what I do. So I worry about that, genuinely worry. And I do worry about growth. In my line of work, you know, young teachers come into my business, and we mentor and we mold them, And then it's hard when they're so fabulous and they want to leave you and they want to spread their wings. That's part of that evolution. Then you have to go. The disadvantage is you have to replace that fabulous person. I love the flexibility that my business affords my family, both financially and in time. I always am available to go get my daughter at 3 o'clock from school, and that is huge for me. That's a wonderful thing. But then again, the flip side to that is when I have people call in sick, I have to sometimes step into those shoes. And so then I don't have so much flexibility. Like yesterday when I was up at 4:30 in the morning making pots of soup for both campuses. There were 44 children to feed lunch to yesterday. And I had meetings and meetings and meetings and inspections. So yesterday it didn't feel so exciting to own my own business. It felt like a ginormous headache. I don't think I have anything more to add. I mean, definitely the good outweighs the bad, but you need to know that there is hard work to do, and it isn't always rosy. And yes, it's great to be the boss, but sometimes it really sucks to be the boss too. I sound really negative, and I don't mean to be, but the reality is it is really hard work to run your own business. And you know, you get this notion in your head, I'm the boss, I own it, but holy, there's a lot of work. Like it's a lot some days.
All right, and then David.
That's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the piece around a lot of work. And in the beginning, a lot of times, now depending on the business you're in, what opportunity you take yourself off on, you don't always have the opportunity to hire someone to do the work that needs to be done. Back in my hostel business, the job that I hated the most I had to do because you couldn't, in the early stages, we couldn't afford to pay anyone to do it, but that was cleaning. In the early stages, there was me and one other person. We owned the business, and we had to do everything, and we had to clean the toilets, and that was my least favorite job, and they had to be done every single day. We had 6 toilets, and that was just not fun. But on the flip side, I loved the fact that I was my own boss. At the end of the day, you report to yourself. Like if you don't do a good job, you had to pay for it. You know that. That actually pushes you to do the best job that you can. And I suppose in one sense you do have a boss. You have the boss of your customer because you need to please them, and if you don't please them, they're not going to come back and buy something again. So I suppose at the end of the day that they're the ultimate customer who's you're responsible to keeping happy. But I think that I actually can wear both hats again. A steady paycheck from a job is awesome. And so there's a plus from a job, but then with that comes the fact that you do have to show up every day, maybe at 9 o'clock, and work within that confines of 9 to 5. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur, you have the flexibility to, if you feel like getting up at 6 a.m. this morning to do the job and get it done by 3, for example, you can do that. You know, there's a lot more flexibility. You still have to do the work though, and I think just it's how you structure yourself in that side. And then once you get successful in business, then you can structure yourself. Maybe you can get a paycheck every 2 weeks because you've been able to structure your business in a way that allows you to do that. So that pro then turns into something that you can have as an entrepreneur as well. But I think that being able to, probably one of the most important positives is being able to do something that you love all the time. And for me, in my job, I'm also some people use the term intrapreneur. You might have heard it, but I'm also an entrepreneur in my job. So I've been able to work, or I am able to work for an organization that I also can set my schedule and do the things that I want to do. Not everyone has that same freedom and flexibility, but the organization that I work for is an entrepreneurial organization. And even just being able to say, I've got a panel at 3 o'clock on Thursday that I got to come and speak to a group of entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, having that flexibility is sort of amazing in the job that I have. So I sort of get the best of both worlds in my day job as well as in my business. But so most positives I think on my side, but there's definitely the negative, and I don't know if to say a negative is it is a lot of work, and I said in the beginning, and sometimes in the beginning those jobs that you don't want to do you have to do. So think about that when you're thinking about starting a business, but no, the reward at the end of the day is greater than some of those negatives.
All right, thank you.
And I just wanted to say, David, I'm glad you mentioned the toilet thing because I knew this guy who was the partner at a graphic design firm, and he actually put on his business cards as partner and janitor.
No, that's awesome.
There you go.
And Michelle, I don't think that you're being negative. I think that the students will appreciate all of you being completely honest and blunt with them, because anyone that's interested in pursuing entrepreneurship needs to know that there's the sunny side, and then there's the not so sunny side.
It's really true about the toilets. In those early years, before you really make enough money, you have to be willing to clean the toilets. Honestly, nobody's doing that for you.
So if you want to be an entrepreneur, grab a plunger and a sponge. All right, so we'll start with Joachim this time. The next question is, when you think about starting, running, and growing your business, what have been some of the significant challenges and some of the highlights that you have faced?
Just on the toilet thing, if you want to avoid cleaning toilets, buy an existing business. Then there's already people there. I guess, in Nova Scotia, definitely is one of the hardest places to start up a business. Big part of that reason is because access to capital is one of the hardest things to find for any entrepreneur. So fortunately, we're working towards getting a better process in place for access to capital. Find that the credit union in Nova Scotia probably has some of the best entrepreneur loans that you can get to start up a business, because the government has put some securities in place for you to be able to get that money. The other one, is the tax equity credit, which is another big thing that will help you get funds for your business. So those are things that definitely make a challenge for you to start up and finding that access. The other one is finding people that you can work with, that you can jive with, that you can trust. That's a hard thing to do, because it's your baby, it's your business, it's your money, it's your house on the line, it's your car on the line, it's your life savings. And to find those people that you can work with that have that understanding but don't have that investment is a challenge. Some of the highlights of growing a business, and talking to someone who's opened and closed a few stores in my day, it's exciting to grow your business, and it's exciting to see something new, but it's also hard to close something too, because it doesn't work. So both of those are which I've had the great fortune to go through, because you learn a lot.
All right, Michelle?
I'm on the fence. Surprise, surprise. There are moments when I would really love to grow my business, because what we do at my Montessori school is pretty special, and I would love to make that available to more families. I really would. I believe children have a right to a really lovely educational experience, and a beautiful environment. I am just going to back up and say that I didn't take out a loan to start my business. I own all of it, 100%, and we paid for it out of our own pockets. And I grew my business very slowly. As I said earlier, I started with a few children in the basement of my house, and I didn't take a salary for 4 years. I took my monthly tuition and I pumped it into materials. And when I got incorporated in 2008, we were pretty surprised at how much I had amassed, and I owned it all. I probably could have taken out a loan, but I didn't want to. I didn't want the responsibility of having that worry of paying the bank, and what if it didn't work out? So we just made it work another way. I'd love to grow my business, I think, some days. I'd love to open a Dartmouth campus. I'd love to open a Bedford campus. But then how much time would I have? And how would I manage that? And there are days when I feel spread very thin. And I don't want to compromise my time with my children. And finding really great people to work for you with great work ethic is a really hard thing. Making sure that they show up to work on time. I had somebody that was 40 minutes late for work this week. That just doesn't fly when you have a ratio that you have to meet of teacher to child. That's extremely stressful, and that's the reality of childcare. So, I don't know, I'm on the fence. Probably be on the fence for a lot longer. And we'll see, maybe. That's my challenge, though, finding the right people and fretting about the money to grow the business and taking on that extra responsibility.
All right, David?
I'm going to tell you a story about starting my business back in 2001 with the hostel. So my business partner, her name's Michelle, and so there's tons and tons of challenges when you're getting started, and it's hard to imagine. And when you look back at the challenges, some of the challenges you've had, you're like, wow, that was so easy now compared to the new challenges that I'm facing today. But so we had found a property on Gottingen Street to open that building, and we had drawn up a business plan and drawn up plans of what we wanted the place to look like. And we knew there were three things that we needed to do. We needed to get a building inspector to give us an occupancy permit. We knew we needed to get the tourism office, the provincial tourism office, to give us a tourism license, and we knew we needed to get financing to get the business off the ground, amongst many other things. So we had gone into the tourism office, and we had taken our plan, and we told them what we wanted to do. And there had at that time been one other hostel on Barrington Street, the International Hostel. They were operating, I won't want to say illegally, but they were operating without a license because they had never had to go through that. They'd been around long enough before the licensing had come into effect. So we said, how do we go about getting a license for a hostel? And they looked at us and a little bit shocked, I guess, and not really knowing what a hostel was. And we explained, it's an interactive way of traveling. You share a room and share common rooms. You can have a kitchen, you can cook, and you can sort of interact with the people you're traveling with. And they said, oh, well, we don't have hostels in Nova Scotia. And they pulled out their guidebook, and there isn't a category for hostel. They said, sorry, you can't open a hostel in Nova Scotia. Why don't you open up an inn or a bed and breakfast? You can charge more money for that. And obviously they didn't know what it was all about. So that's fine. And we went, around the same time we were looking at speaking with the building inspector's office, and we had the building was older, probably about 100 years old at the time, and we went into the building inspector's office and said, we'd like to have a hostel. This is the building we have. This is the floor plan. He said, oh, no. He said, that building's way too old. There's no way you could ever fit that number of people in the building. So it's second no. And then, so again, we're working with the bank. So all are on the same time, and we'd actually applied for this program through the banks. It's a federal program, the Canada Small Business Financing Loan, and basically you get it through a bank, but the federal government will guarantee the money up to 80% of the loan, and this seemed to be the only loan that we could get at the time. Heard back about a week after we met with the individual, submitted our plan, and the word from Toronto was, our experts know your business isn't going to be successful. So luckily, Michelle and I never take no for an answer. So I guess the learning in this is don't ever take no, and if there's a challenge, find a way around it. We went back to the tourism office and said, hey, there's a hostel downtown. We don't want to open up a bed and breakfast. We don't want to open up an inn. How do we do it? And they sat down with us, and there happens to be another category called other. So we were in other accommodation. Went back to the building inspector's office and said, we want to do this. People are using old buildings all the time in the city and renovating them. How can we go about doing it? And he pulled out his big book, the big book, and dusted it off basically, and flipped through it and said, oh, well, if you move this fire door here and you put in a fire alarm system, then yeah, sure, you'll be able to do this. A little bit more money, but a possibility. And then luckily we had found, at that time actually had found the SEED and CYBF organizations and actually got a pre-approved mortgage on the property too. So in the end, we were able to go about and actually do what we wanted to do. But all those challenges along the way, some people look at that challenge and say, there's absolutely no way I can do it. But I challenge anyone who is saying that to say, actually find another way to go about doing it, because there's always a way, and always a way to actually be able to meet and open up the business that you're looking to do. Well, I won't say always, but for the most part, there should always be a way to be able to open up the business that you want to do.
Excellent, thank you. Jana?
Oh, I think I'll start with some highlights. Highlights, going to a trade show without much expectation and blowing it out of the water, where people are lined up to see you. That feels really good. I did a rebranding project this fall, and we launched a new website, and I actually have it coming into my phone, which was a mistake, but every time a new person signs up to be a member of this site, I get a little notification, and seeing it go and seeing where people are from. I mean, someone in Russia, and you've got someone in Yemen, and all over the place, signing up and looking at stuff that we've made and downloading patterns and things like that. So those are all really, really exciting, especially when you have that international reach and that people want to look at and buy the stuff that you're making. And making something is a really satisfying process. It is sometimes when I'm dealing with the bank or just dealing with suppliers, dealing with all of that. Sometimes I just stop what I'm doing and I go down to my dye house and I make something. And it's very satisfying, and my staff are also very satisfied. At the end of the day, you actually have produced a product that you've touched and that you've made, and it feels pretty good. Challenges particular to Nova Scotia, and I have a bit of a different take on this. I actually started this business in Vancouver in 2005, and I was there for 5 years before moving it here. Property taxes in the city of Halifax is a huge, huge problem. We went up 8% this year. The value of our building did not go up 8%. So that's a whole other thing. But also, when I was in Vancouver and we were busy, we would raise the overtime flag. Anyone want to work overtime? It's time and a half. And most people jumped at the opportunity to make extra money. Here, you raise the overtime flag, you might get half an hour out of people. We have here a real love of lifestyle. In fact, I mean, there's a brand, East Coast Lifestyle, and I wonder what that actually means. Everyone thinks it's work-life balance, but I feel like as an entrepreneur, and I think everyone on the panel, I'm hearing a lot about hustle. You know, we all are hustlers, and you need to be a hustler to be an entrepreneur, and we've lost that in Nova Scotia a little bit, and I think we need to get back to some more hustle. And even in dealing with government, even people in government, they're not always hustling either. So, you know, I think it's all of us need to hustle a little more, and to make this a successful place to start a business.
All right. Thank you for sharing all those comments about your experience, I guess. And I do have a question for you, Jana. Is that made by your product?
Yes.
Very nice. I love the color. All right, so we'll start with Michelle for our next question. What do you see as the key management skills needed in organizations today, particularly in the entrepreneurial context?
Well, I think you have to look at the big picture always. I think you have to know your target audience. My target audience is children aged 3 to 5, and you have to be willing to listen to them and their parents. You have to be willing to go the extra mile with your clients, even if you feel like it's too much sometimes. It isn't. I once took every 3 years I have to renew my CPR and first aid. And my instructor said something really great. He said, when there is a critical emergency happening in front of you, never run to it. Take a deep breath and walk to it, and you will find that you will collect your thoughts in those moments. I really like to apply that to a lot of things. When there's a situation that isn't so great, I don't race to it. I try to take a breath and I try to collect my thoughts. And sometimes I sit on things for a day or two before I react. Being proactive and less reactive is a really good thing, especially with your employees. Looking at every angle when you're dealing with an employee is important. Listening, but really hearing your employees is really important. What else? Don't compromise quality either with your business. I am unwilling to spare any expense on art materials in my classroom or food. Our children eat local and antibiotic-free meat. It's more expensive, but it's just quality I'm not willing to compromise on. I spend a fortune on watercolor paint and art materials and professional development for my staff. And we reap those benefits, and the children are joyful. And so you can't be cheap in things. You can cut corners in some places, but some places you can't. And so you can't compromise quality in your business. So I think, if I were to say one really important thing, is, you need to be approachable, and you really need to listen to everybody around you, your audience, your employees, because they're talking to you, and really at the end of the day, your clients are your bread and butter, and so if you're not listening to them, then you don't really have much of a business.
All right, thank you, Michelle. And now we'll hear from David.
I think the one that I'll focus on as far as a skill I think is very important in management is leadership. And I right now don't have employees. In the farm I had volunteers. So a lot of the leadership that I had, it took a lot of leadership, I should say, to get volunteers to want to come out. Again, I'll tell you a story. So on September 20th, I had planned to have a HASCAP planting day, and I had to put 5,000 plants in the ground. And I knew I could hire someone to do it. That was an opportunity. But I wanted to create a community day. I wanted to have an event and really bring people together and experience that with me. So I actually put out on social media and put out through email, and any ways that I could, reach out to people that I knew. And in the end, I was able to organize 60 people to come out and take part on a sunny Saturday and Sunday to play in the dirt. And that was just an amazing experience. But it wasn't, those individuals wouldn't necessarily come out for anyone. They thought, I believe, that they saw a passion. So as a leader, they saw the passion that I had for what I was doing, and they believed in what I was doing, and for that reason they wanted to follow and come out and actually take part in something like that. So I would say there's an opportunity, and from leadership, in any of the roles that we have today. So any of that, whether it's a club that you're involved with school, or maybe it's within a class, there's an opportunity to take a leadership role in a presentation, or anything that may be. I would say work on some of the leadership skills that you have, and any of those skills will be able to help you down the road as you move into any sort of managerial roles in the future.
All right, thank you. Now, Jana?
I'm trying to think of something that hasn't been said. One of the things I struggle with myself is overcommitting and time management. So I have been, the busier my business gets and the bigger it grows, the later I am for things, because I'm always trying to squeeze one more thing into my work day. So that's something that I need to keep continuing to work on. But if you're very good at time management, that will serve you well, or very good at just saying no to people, saying, I don't think I have time, or that's not a reasonable deadline, or let's come to it somewhere in the middle. I think that's a really good skill. And also, in business, the customer's always right, but there are so many times where I have to eat something. I end up paying for someone else's mistake, but I do it to make my customers happy, and because of that, they're incredibly loyal. And that loyalty goes a long way. And that happens too with my suppliers. So the other thing, it's not really a management issue, but I do think finding both suppliers and customers that you have similar attitudes, similar business types, is highly advantageous. I have I have a few suppliers. Culturally, we're the same. We meet and we get along, and it's not just personalities. It actually has to do with how our businesses are structured and what our values are, and how we treat our employees and how we treat our customers. And I have one supplier in particular who doesn't fit that mold, and there's constant kind of animosity, like, do they really want to supply to me? Do they really want to sell to me? Are they trying to find someone else who will pay a higher price than I will? And it's not fun with your business day, and I don't think overall it's going to make you more money. So I do recommend that. The culture of the businesses that you're working with, I think, is really important. So that's it.
All right, and now we'll hear from Joachim.
I guess the big part for me is your personality. What kind of a person are you? Can you do this is a big question. And then that personality that you have has to fit into the industry that you want to open your business up. So for me, I love the outdoors, so it was an absolute perfect fit for me to grow my business or expand my business or go into business, as long as it was in the parameters of the outdoor industry. And I guess with that, the personality comes the ability to keep 100 balls in the air. And that's where that's my greatest gift, is because I'm ADD and I love to do 1,000 things at once. So as an entrepreneur, I can do that. Someone who doesn't have my personality would worry about that one ball over on the left, and 10 other ones would drop down. So I think a good entrepreneur is able to keep all that going, all that moving, and still succeed. The other thing is you have to understand your market. You have to be able to see what's out there, who your competitors are, and be able to do it better. For my business, I have some of the biggest competitors in the world that personally I don't think play in the same sandbox as I do, because they hide under a cooperative. But you know what? I can do a better job than them, and I'm not worried about them. Because if I worry about my competition, then I will always lose. So don't worry about them. Keep going forward and progressing your business. And with those things all in mind, that's how I try to succeed, and I try to be better.
All right, perfect. Thank you all for your comments. And finally, the last question is, do you have any advice that you'd like to give any future entrepreneurs in the room? We'll start with David this time.
Okay. Lots and lots and lots of advice. I'm going to put on my futurepreneur hat for a minute here, but there's so many programs out there, so many resources out there, and so much support out there for anybody who wants to get started in business. I'll put a plug in for Futurepreneur Canada. Futurepreneur.ca has some great resources as far as how to put together a business plan, how to put together cash flow, crash courses on how to actually go about doing some of the aspects of business. Mentorship, get a mentor. I've had many mentors in business as I've gotten started, so go out and find a mentor, somebody who can give you some support. They've been there, they've done that, and so many mentors are willing to be asked, or I guess I should say honored to be asked to be a mentor and willing to give back some advice. And I mentioned on the resource side, do your planning, do your research. Go out and don't just start a business. Go out and basically on paper start a business. See, how am I going to go about doing this? Find out all the answers to the questions that you might have. Ask some other people about that. Get some people to look at your business plan, and before you jump into it. There was talked about the challenges, some of the challenges being financing, and there's so many programs. For example, Joachim mentioned the equity tax credit program. That's another. As a Nova Scotian, you have the opportunity to raise money and invest money into your company and get tax credits for it. And so there's so many opportunities out there to get started. So research those opportunities, talk to the organizations that are out there, and do a business plan before you get started.
All right. Thank you, David. And now we'll hear from Jana.
I'm next. I would say think global. Nova Scotia is not a particularly wealthy place, so there's just not as much money going around for certain things. So it depends, it's depending of course, what your business is. But if you can have a business that exports, yay. And broadly exports, not just to one country. Cover your bases. When the American economy dipped in 2008, we felt it big time. But we were selling in Europe. We were selling in other places. So, it didn't hurt as much. So I think that is key. If that's the kind of business you have, like the Haskappa berries, those are going to sell here, but I would expect those are going to go outside of Canada, and that's where there's real growth.
All right. Thank you, Jana. And now we'll hear from Joachim.
I guess I'll give you guys one piece of advice, because there's already been a lot given. But for some reason in Nova Scotia, 77% of businesses aren't incorporated. I can't understand why that is. So if you are going to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, incorporate yourself. That protects you. You pay lower tax. People who are not incorporated pay personal income tax versus a 3% on a small business tax. So that would be a really important thing to do. So think about that.
All right. Thank you, Joachim. And then Michelle.
I have to echo that, actually. Getting incorporated is probably one of the best things I ever did. I don't know why. Well, I do. I was a pretty small business in the early days, and it only made sense when I grew my numbers to get incorporated. But it really protects you. If your business went bankrupt, It wouldn't ruin you personally. And so you need to think about that. The other thing I would say is if you're really passionate about an idea, reach for it. I was really passionate about Montessori education for preschoolers, and so I went for it. And I think that you have to do that, and you can't be afraid, because at the end of the day, if you're really passionate about it, you're going to work really hard, and hard work always pays off. So don't be afraid to follow your heart and your dream. And also, it's really important to have a really supportive spouse or partner in your life. I've been really, really lucky because Sean's been amazing, and you know, I didn't do a business degree, so when I have questions about marketing or really anything, I go to him, and he answers everything for me and helps me along my path. So it's a brilliant marriage in a lot of respects. So it's important to have a supportive partner or a supportive spouse if you're running your own business. And that's really it.
All right, perfect. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. And before we wrap up the panel here, we are going to open up a Q&A session. So for those of you that have any questions for our panel of entrepreneurs, this is the time to express it.
Hi. I was just wondering if you have a business idea as a young adult or somebody who's just coming out of their business degree or any other degree, as we've seen, do you think that it's more beneficial for us to look to get some job experience and some really industry experience in what we're interested in opening up first, or to just try to dive in and start our business without any of that kind of vital experience?
I think work experience is a great thing. So I taught in classrooms before I started my business, but also I nannied for a family for a long time. And I think I knew that my path was going to take me where it did. When you have work experience that you bring to the table, that knowledge is invaluable, and you look at things a little differently, and you're already going into it with a great work ethic. So I think work experience is a good thing, really a good thing.
I'm going to agree with that, even though I didn't do that. I think know yourself, and as a couple examples, I mean, so a lot of folks are taking business, the idea they're taking business, that they're learning business to go into business. If you're, for example, maybe you're going into school in trades. Well, go out and get experience in what it is that you're doing before you then go out and do it. But if you know your personality is the type of personality that you're going to go out, you've got the work ethic, you have the ability to do some of the just-in-time learning like I did. If you know your personality is that way, that's fine. But I wouldn't say that a lot of people are necessarily like that. I think the actual work experience that you get, the things you learn through that, are so invaluable. When I opened up the hostel, we didn't even have a cash box. I didn't realize the idea that, I need to have a cash box. Where do I put the money? So simple things like that, we learned and we got through it. But to be able to actually work in a hotel, for example, I would have had so much experience. I probably would have saved so much money in actually having a reservation system. We didn't have. So some of those things we would have actually had if I had actually done and had actually worked in that industry. So I didn't do it, but I think there's this huge benefit in actually getting that experience ahead of time.
Okay, I don't know if you remember being in school, maybe not in university, maybe in high school, and you dreaded going to school every day. So if you get into the workforce and that's how you feel about your job, you just dread it, you should go work for yourself. But if you, for example, we all love coming to work every day. So it depends. It depends what kind of job you get. If you can get a great work experience, and you might really enjoy working for other people, but if you try it and you hate it, that's your answer.
I guess for me, it's all about your personality. Like if you have the personality to learn by doing and to make mistakes and fail and succeed, then by all means go for it. But you have to be strong to be able to do that. And I think so understanding who you are as an individual will answer that question better than any four of us can answer that for you.
I would like to add, too, that the learning curve is immense. When I went from a part-day program and moved my business out of my house into a commercial space, and I went to 24 children and employed 4 teachers, I was beside myself. The learning curve was immense. Not only did I have to, look at how to manage my staff, and I'd never had an employee at that point, maybe one person part-time, but I had to deal with a lot of regulation around licensing my center, food regulation, making sure everyone had their police checks. It is, my type of work is heavily regulated, and you have to be all over that. And then there is regulation within the day, and for outside time and inside time and programming. And so in whatever you do, you need to know that the learning curve when you step off is huge, and you can't be afraid of it. You just have to knuckle down and do it.
This lady here.
My question is directed to Joachim, if that's how you say it.
Yep, that's
okay. So my first question is, looking at all of the students here as a network or opportunity, is there an opportunity or a network you wish to retain and haven't yet? That's number one. Should I repeat?
Yeah, just go back to the last bit of that question.
Okay. I said, is there an opportunity or a network you wish to retain and haven't yet? Okay, looking at all of the students here as a network and an opportunity. That's question one.
Can I answer that one?
Go ahead. Yep.
I guess looking at and I'm gonna put my government hat on for this question, because I think the future of Nova Scotia sits in this classroom in more ways than one. Looking at this classroom, I'm going to take a guess here, but a lot of you aren't from Nova Scotia originally. Immigration is going to be a key part of the success in the future of Nova Scotia and the success in the future of Canada. So in order for us to create a new network or there has to be a better way to retain the students here, to stay in Nova Scotia and to open a business, to become entrepreneurs. Manitoba has the highest immigration rate in Canada with the highest retention rate. And the big reason of that is because of the entrepreneurism that is there. The amount of, and also with that comes one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada.
Okay. So question number two. A lot of businesses have closed down on Barrington. I asked this question because you're in government. A lot of businesses have closed down on Barrington. Few examples are like Renaissance, Just Us Coffee Shop, and Domino's Pizza. Could beautification
And mine. And mine.
And,
I had one.
okay, and likewise yourself.
Down
Okay.
there too, so.
Could beautification better signages, a more modern look, while still keeping the history of buildings, help businesses on Barrington? What is your strategy?
This is a big municipal problem versus a provincial problem. The biggest, and it was touched on earlier in this discussion, the biggest fundamental problem for Halifax is the commercial taxes for businesses. So my square footage of my store, which was 1,200 square feet, my property tax in that small space was $18,000 a year. So my business on Quimple Road is $24,000 a year. Those are full-time, part-time positions that you're being able to do. So the PVSC, which is the provincial body that deals with regulation of property taxes, there is going to be some processes and stuff put in place to try to mitigate that issue. The second part of that, can heritage and business work together? Absolutely. I mean, if you look at European cities which have vibrant downtown cores with their heritage, it works. But in order right now, what's the stumbling block right now is the sheer cost of rent versus to succeed in the downtown core. So you don't have the population base on the peninsula to sustain those high rents, which are caused by high property taxes. So until we get more density in the downtown core, we're not going to have a downtown core that's going to be able to succeed. Fortunately, we have tons of cranes popping up. We have residents popping up. There is more discussion of that, and it's incorporating the old historical aspects of it, of the downtown core and the modern developments. Hope that answers.
I asked that because Spring Garden has survived, and a lot of businesses.
There's a lot of closing businesses on Spring Garden right now. More and more businesses are being shut down there, and it's a sad case. Retail is a revolving door anyways, per se, but it's still, Spring Garden is getting to a point also where you're not going to see local businesses. It's going to be big corporations, like what's opening up downtown on Barrington is Urban Outfitters. That's not a Nova Scotia locally owned business.
No.
That's someone who has deep pockets, who can afford that rent. And you know what? And the localness of businesses is going to be lost on the Spring Gardens and the Barringtons.
And
Quimple Road, Agricola, those are going to be your next hubs that are going to be local.
And I was just going to say, I mean, the trouble with that is that then we buy things there and then our money leaves the province.
You
It's
know,
all about keeping the money
local,
here if we
buying
can.
local. Yeah. You
Or
have,
getting the money from other places and bringing it here.
you have to buy from small business, and you have to be really committed to that. As an entrepreneur, I am committed to buying from small business and supporting my local business. And if you want it to thrive, you have to be willing to suck up the price tag sometimes and support it. It's the only way.
I think as well too, and everyone in this room has a role to play in it. And instead of getting in your car and driving to Bayers Lake and going to the big box stores and yeah, sure, sometimes they have some deals. It's supporting small business. I mean, even some of those small business can be a locally owned chain. I mean, that even if it's somebody owning a local business that may be a bigger organization, it can still be a local person. But instead of going out to the, I shouldn't say don't go to the business parks, but instead of make a conscious effort, instead of going out and actually come and go down to Goddard Street, go to Agricola, go downtown, go to Spring Garden Road and support some of the local businesses that are there.
And I guess I'm just going to finish this up. I'm going to challenge every one of you guys in this room who want to be entrepreneurs is something called shift 10%. So take your buying that you're buying now, shift 10% of that into local businesses. By doing that, you increase the local economy substantially. So just think about that. Every dollar that's spent in a local business, 73 cents stays in Nova Scotia. Every dollar you spend at Walmart, 30 cents stays in Nova Scotia. So think about that when you're buying.
I have just one question. If I'm running my business and I fail more than one time, what is your suggestion to me?
Can you speak? You've failed more than one time?
Yes.
Oh, if you do.
I got that one.
Okay, go.
I'm
Yeah.
going to start with this one
Yeah.
because I'm good at that. You know, and I was going to end up the discussion on this one comment. As an entrepreneur in Nova Scotia, and I kind of touched on it, if you fail, celebrate it. If you succeed, celebrate it. Because both of those are things that we need to do. If you're going to fail, try again. In the United States, bankruptcy is a badge of honor. How many times have you gone bankrupt? Oh, I went bankrupt 3 times. Oh, what are you now? A multimillionaire. Congratulations. Because every time that you fail, you succeed. And every time you succeed, you will continue on and grow yourself as an individual, will grow as a business. And it's very interesting that that culture in the United States is accepted, but here in Nova Scotia, it's not. So that's my preach kind of right now in life is if you go bankrupt and you know a friend that's gone bankrupt, say thank you. If you know someone who's driving a Ferrari because they succeeded, say thank you. They equally own that.
Well, and there's a learning opportunity in failure. It's not a terrible thing to fail at something. You just learned something in all of that. So.
And so I completely agree with the comments that are being said. And to add one side to it is, don't set up to fail. I mean, that's not what we're saying. You know, go out and don't just jump on the bankruptcy wagon because you think I've got a few bills to pay. I don't know if I can do it. But make sure you try your best and you work your hardest before you go down that route, because because bankruptcy can and could be a big challenge that we face here locally if everyone were to go bankrupt. So don't necessarily jump on that trend unless you really have to. But when you actually do have an opportunity to fail, I think there's a fund in New Brunswick that you can't actually get a loan through them unless you failed once. It's called the Failure Fund. Celebrate that. Don't not start a business because you might fail. Start a business because you see an opportunity. If you do fail, learn from that opportunity.
And one quick thing, and if you're able to, have a plan B. If you're able not to put all your chickens in one basket, if you're able to, a 25% plan B, I think it's a good thing to have in the back of your head.
Yeah, or that supportive partner who's willing to work the full-time job while you chase your dream and not take a salary for a little while. I mean, plan B is a good thing too.
All right, thank you all so much. So we are out of time. Again, addressing the learning passport issue, please have your pages completely filled out. We're talking your description of this event, the title, your signature, all that jazz. And there will be 2 stamping locations, one down here and one at the top with Miriam. Thank you.